Hey guys, today I wanted to do the 50 random things about me video. I thought this would be really fun to do and a chance for you guys who watch me to get to know me a little bit better. And also, James is watching Breaking Bad and I don't watch that show. It stresses me out, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to do this. I had grand plans and I made notes, which I have here, but I didn't finish, and so I apologize if this is a bit choppy. My middle name is Grace. I sunburn really easily and I wear sunscreen all the time. I met my husband on Facebook. James hates telling people that, but it was back in 2006 when it was just college kids and nobody, like, it wasn't crazy, like everybody wasn't on it at that time. And but James hates telling people that, but I think it's kind of cool. We have two boys, Peter, who's 5, and Killian, who is 1. Everything happened extremely fast with James and I. We met in February of 06, we got engaged in July of 06, we married in May of 07, and we had Peter in December of 07. And so within the span of less than 2 years, we met, got married, and had a baby. If you did the math on that last one, you will realize that I was 10 weeks pregnant on my wedding day. That was not planned at all, and we actually had moved the wedding up for other reasons. I just didn't want to wait. We were originally going to get married in September, and I moved the wedding up to May because I just didn't want to wait that long, and this was way early on in the engagement, and so thank God I moved it because I would have been a lot more pregnant on my wedding day than I actually was. I've had 2 C-sections, I've tried for 2 vaginal deliveries, and both have not gone according to plan. I plan on doing videos about those later, maybe in April. I plan on doing Veda in April, and also April is Cesarean Awareness Month, so I plan on doing my birth stories in April, so stay tuned. I would always lie about what I wanted to be when I grew up. I would always tell people that what my friends wanted to be. Like, if my friend wanted to be a teacher, I would say I wanted to be a teacher. If my friend wanted to be a nurse, I'd say I wanted to be a nurse. And I did this because I really wanted to be an actress, and I was afraid people would think it was weird. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do as an adult. I just had a hard time. I started out college as a history education major, and then I moved to communication education, which was like speech, debate, and drama. And then I dropped out for a little while, and then I enrolled in beauty school, and then I worked in a doctor's office for a little while. I worked in a movie theater and that was all in different orders. I had a really hard time, and then I ended up going to respiratory school, and so it has a happy ending, but it was crazy. I had a really hard time discovering what I wanted to do with my life. Like I said, I worked at a movie theater for about a year, a little over a year, and it's still my favorite job to this day. It was fun. I got free movies. All of my friends worked there. We, hung out all the time. If you've seen the movie Waiting, like, you know how they all wake up at the same party and then they go to work together and then they party again that night. That's pretty much what it was like working at the movie theater. I would, we'd stay up all night partying, and then we'd work together all day the next day, and then we'd party again. And it was crazy, and it was, silly, and I was 19, but I think you have to have years like that in your life, or it's just not that fun. So that was my kind of crazy time when I worked at the movie theater. I also played poker once a week when I worked at the movie theater. It was a group of guys, but there were a couple of us girls who worked at the theater also that would do it. And we played poker every Tuesday, and it was a $10 buy-in, and we played Texas Hold'em. And I actually won one time, and I won $80. And I think, that's nothing compared to the, I don't know, $520 that I spent over the course of that year to win that $80, but it was still fun. I almost moved to California to pursue a career in acting, and then got derailed. I was going to move out there and work at a movie theater out there, the AMC Marina Pacifica in Long Beach, California, and I had an apartment, I had everything set up, and then my stepdad had an episode. We don't really know what it was. He ended up having all these tests run. He was in the hospital. It was really scary. And I ended up deciding that I didn't want to leave and that I wanted to stay home. His cardiologist ended up hiring me, and I worked in his office, and that's what got me in the medical field. And then I met James because my sister told me, because I was depressed because I didn't go, and I was embarrassed because I'd made such a big deal about going. My sister told me that if I got on Facebook, it would make me feel better, and then I ended up meeting James, and so it all worked out. My dad died when I was 14 years old of a very rare form of meningitis, and my mom married his best friend 2.5 years later. And it sounds really weird, but it's really not, but people think it's weird. I have one stepbrother and a stepsister, and then I have a biological sister who's younger. My step siblings are older, and we really don't differentiate between each other. We usually just call each other brother and sister. I grew up with my step-siblings because I said my stepdad was my best friend, or my stepdad was my dad's best friend growing up. And so my step-siblings have always just been there. I've known my step-siblings since I was born. I don't remember a time when they didn't exist. I don't remember a time when my stepdad didn't exist. He's always been in my life. And so they're not really, we're kind of, James said if he would have met us and he didn't know that my dad had passed away, then he wouldn't think we were a blended family at all. We all get along really well. We mesh really well together. It kind of makes me sad because it's almost like my dad never existed, and that part kind of makes me upset. But you deal with the cards that you're dealt, I think. And I loved my dad. My dad was a great dad. He was a great man. I want to teach all of my boys all about him. But at the same time, I don't want that to take away from my stepdad, who has been a great grandfather to them and a great father figure to me. And so we have a pretty great family for what we've been through. I have a weird generational gap in my family. I don't really know how to explain this. My dad's grandfather had my grandfather. So my great-grandfather had my grandfather when he was 73 years old. Yeah. So 73, and then my grandfather was 40 when he had my dad. And so my dad and his grandpa are 113 years apart. My dad's grandfather was a Civil War veteran. And people would laugh at him when he'd say that. But he was right. His grandpa fought in the American Civil War. Crazy. I was in drama and choir in high school. I did a lot of musicals. I did plays. I did all kinds of stuff. I did Oklahoma. I did Little Shop of Horrors. I did The Curious Savage, Diary of Anne Frank, all that stuff. I was obsessed with the Holocaust when I was younger. That sounds horrible, but I really was. I was fascinated by it. I read the Diary of Anne Frank several times. This was before I did the play in high school, which I was very ecstatic about. But I read the book several times. I researched a lot about Hitler and the Nazi regime. The Sound of Music. I liked The Sound of Music because it took place in that time. I love things about World War II. And my mom actually thought it was really creepy, and she was kind of worried about me for a while. But my dad, who was a huge history buff, he was a Civil War reenactor, completely understood where I was coming from and would always tell my mom that it was okay. I had bizarre allergies as a kid. I would break out in hives everywhere. My eyes would swell shut. The bridge of my nose would swell and cover my eyes. It was freaky weird, and they never really figured out what exactly caused it. They were never able to pinpoint anything. I was just allergic to pollen, grass, weeds, mold, just air stuff. And I still do it to this day, not to the extent that I did. When I was a kid, it happened all the time, but just the other day, this part of my lip swelled up, and it's just, I don't know, it's weird, but they were never really able to figure that out. I developed incisional endometriosis after my first C-section, and I've heard this is very rare. I've never met anybody that's done this, but somehow the lining of my uterus got turned inside out when they sewed me back together, and the tissue grew and caused endometriosis, but in my abdominal muscle. And so I had to have surgery again 2 years after Peter was born to get that removed. I was obsessed with the Backstreet Boys when I was a teenager. And it's crazy that they're still around. Like, it amazes me. Like, when we're at work, we watch MTV and VH1 on the TVs because that's the only thing on after 4 o'clock in the morning other than infomercials. And it's crazy that they still have music videos on. But I was absolutely obsessed with them. Brian was my favorite, and I could still tell you all of their birthdays. Yeah, but I won't embarrass myself like that. I love pop culture and pop culture trivia. I love discussing movies and TV and things like that. I have a subscription to Entertainment Weekly that my mom renews every year for Christmas, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite times of the week is when my Entertainment Weekly comes in. I love reading everything about it. I don't get to see as many movies or watch as much TV as I used to, but I still love it. And my sister actually calls me still to ask me questions, but it got a little out of hand. This was about 8 years ago. She called me one time to ask me a question. She had her friends with her, and she said, "Oh, I'll just call my sister. They were wanting to know what the sequel was to Get Shorty." And she's like, "Oh, well, I'll call my sister." And she said, "I bet she can even tell you who produced it." And so she called me and asked, what was the sequel to Get Shorty? And I said, "Oh, it was Be Cool." And she said, who produced it? And I said, oh, well, I know that one of the producers was Danny DeVito. And she said, haha, you know, thanks, bye. She hung up. Then she gave my phone number to her friends. And then I would get random phone calls from random people. And it was like, hey, who was the guy that was in the weird movie with the what? And it was nuts. I felt like I was on some weird game show for like 6 months, but I never won anything. And I got every single question right. My favorite show of all time is probably Gilmore Girls. Love it. I will never get tired of it. I can watch it all the time. And if I had to watch one thing over and over and over again for the rest of my life, it would be that. I love British TV shows. I love Doctor Who, and even the older ones like Keeping Up Appearances, and As Time Goes By, Fawlty Towers. I like the newer ones like Coupling, Gavin and Stacey. Love Gavin and Stacey. And Top Gear. I love Top Gear. The theme song to Top Gear is actually my ringtone. And the TARDIS is my notification tone. So, yeah, I like British television. I went on a choir trip to Europe when right after my senior year of high school. It was after my senior year of high school. And we went to 7 countries. We went to England, France, Germany, Liechtenstein, Austria, and Italy. Is that 7? Yeah. And it was fun. It was about 3 weeks, so it was kind of rushed. We spent like 3 days in each country, except Liechtenstein. We like spent an afternoon there, and Italy we only went to Venice for a little while. But it was great. It was fun, and I really want to go back someday. I have no idea when that's going to happen, but it was a good time. I'm a little embarrassed to admit this. I love the Olsen twins. And yeah, luckily I have a friend, my best friend Courtney shares this weirdness with me, and I love all their like made for TV movies, like or their straight to video movies like Winning London and Holiday in the Sun and Passport to Paris and Billboard Dad and all that stuff. Yeah, it's a little embarrassing, but I love it, and every once in a while we have an Olsen twin night and we watch Olsen twin movies, and yeah, it's fun. I have a friend that I've never met in real life. we met on MySpace in 2005. His name is Hector, and he lives in New Jersey. And we still talk to each other on a regular basis. We always call each other on our birthdays. And we email back and forth. When Tropical Storm Sandy happened, I tried to contact him to make sure that he was okay. When all the tornadoes rolled through here, he contacted me to make sure I was okay. And so we talk to each other, and we've never met in real life. I hope to meet him someday, just because that would be really cool. I competed in speech, debate, and readers theater in college, and I was not very good at debate. They just had me debate for sweeps purposes. My teacher always told me that as long as I didn't throw up, pass out, or walk out of the room, then I was good. And so that's pretty much what I did. I sucked at it. It was awful. I did do well in the speech competitions, though. I did win first place in one of the, it's called Program Oral Interpretation. It was one of the acting ones. But I did win in that. But debate, I was horrible. I grew up in Moore, Oklahoma. I've talked about this very briefly. So I've seen several tornadoes in my lifetime. I lived there during the May 3rd of 99. I lived there during the 2003 one. My sister lost her house on that one, and I didn't live in Moore this last time. We live in another suburb of Oklahoma City. I lived here when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, and I remember that day really vividly. I was 9 years old. I was in 4th grade, and it was freaky. Like, I don't think I understood the magnitude of it. I knew it was a big deal, and I knew it was bad, but I don't really think I understood what it all meant. It wasn't until I've gotten older and I've seen documentaries about it, and really, I don't know. It's a much bigger deal now to me than it was when I was younger, and I think it's just because I remember being a child and not really processing it very well. My dad was a firefighter, and so he helped with the search and rescue. It was, I don't know, it was scary, but not as much at the time. But now looking back, yeah. There is a museum that they've made by the memorial. I've been to the memorial several times. The memorial is gorgeous. If you ever come to Oklahoma City, please stop by. It is amazing and it is beautiful. The museum I've never been in, and I really, to be honest, I have no desire to go in there. I've heard it's very intense from people that live here and remember that day, and I've just heard it's a very intense experience, and I think I'll take I'll take the kids when they're old enough, which I've heard will be a while, but when they're old enough to see that. But I remember it. I was there. I don't really think I need to go through the museum right now. I think it would be hard. I don't know. I went to Las Vegas twice in 2011. I'd never been before, and James and I went. It was our first solo trip really ever. We didn't really take any vacations while we were dating or while we were engaged. James and I went in January of 2011, and then I came home and talked about how awesome it was, and then my sister wanted to go, and so then I went with my sister and a couple of friends in June of 2011. So I'd never been to Las Vegas before, and then all of a sudden I went twice. I used to do extreme couponing. I had like the binder with like the baseball card holders with the coupons all in it, and I was very good at it. I saved us a lot of money, but it was very time consuming, and after Killian was born, it was just too hard to keep up. And with everything that we've started doing with using the cloth diapers and using homemade soaps and homemade detergents and stuff like that, I really haven't needed the coupons as much, and we started eating a lot healthier. We started eating a lot more fresh meats and fruits and vegetables, and you can't really get coupons for that stuff. Those days were fun. I thought it was a blast to go into a store and come out with like $50 worth of groceries for $3, and it was fun, and I did that for a while. That was a little hobby of mine. I did very eclectic activities as a child. My parents didn't make me stick with anything, which can be good or bad. I did basketball, I did softball, I did ice skating, I did tumbling, I did piano. Yeah. I used to be a huge coffee drinker. I drank coffee all the time, and whatever I got at Starbucks, I would always add 1 or 2 extra shots of espresso. And I've lately switched over to tea. I actually like tea a lot better. I love herbal tea and chai tea lattes, and I prefer that to coffee, which is weird. And my friends who have known me for years think it's really bizarre that I'm a tea drinker now instead of a coffee drinker. If I could have any job in the world, would be like graphic design or like stationery design. I love designing invitations for like bridal showers, baby showers, bachelorette parties. I didn't fly on an airplane until I was 15. We drove everywhere. My dad was very big on vacations. We took vacations all the time. We went to mostly Civil War battlefields. We drove to Disney World twice, once when I was 4, once when I was 12. We drove to Gettysburg. We drove to Alabama almost every year. We had family reunion in Alabama. We drove to Montana. We drove to Yellowstone. We drove to Mount Rushmore. We drove everywhere. I didn't fly until after he passed away. I can quote the original Yours, Mine, and Ours, the one with Lucille Ball and Henry Fonda, beginning to end, every single word. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, I think because I watched it as a kid, and when I watch it as an adult, I notice that it's cheesy, but I still love it. I absolutely love it. And the remake is horrible. I don't recommend the remake at all. So if you ever watch it, just please watch the original, because the remake is terrible. But the original is so good. It's so good. I didn't wear pants until I was 11. I grew up Independent Baptist, and they're very strict fundamental Baptist, and so I grew up wearing skirts and culottes all the time. It was very attractive. I didn't buy my first pair of jeans until I was 11 years old. I used to make fun of people who cloth diapered their kids. Yeah, sad but true. I saw Hanson at my elementary school. Hanson they're from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they would tour elementary schools in Oklahoma, and my elementary school was one of them. I was in 5th grade, and they did a little concert in our cafeteria, and my parents paid $1 for my sister and I to go, and they thought it was kind of silly. They would, like, the piece of paper they sent home was like, oh, these boys are going to be famous one day, and my parents were like, oh yeah, whatever, we'll send them $1. And so they sent us to the concert, and turns out they ended up being massively huge, and yeah, we got to see them in our elementary school cafeteria. I did not know how to cook until I was married. I made Hamburger Helper maybe once before I got married. Other than that, I ate cereal and turkey sandwiches and Sour Patch Kids. That was what my diet consisted of as a late teen, early 20s, which is sad. And yeah, Peter would be insanely jealous of my 20-year-old self. But I taught myself how to cook, and now I'm pretty decent at it. I actually enjoy it. But the first thing I ever made for James was like a vodka sauce with pasta, and I didn't cook it well enough, and so we got extremely drunk, and James started telling me that it tasted bad, and I started crying, and it was, yeah, that was bad. But that was the first thing I ever made him, and I didn't cook at all until I was married. I never did laundry on a regular basis either. I was a horrible housekeeper. I would pick up, but laundry was, I don't know, for some reason the concept was lost on me. I don't know what the deal was. I would rather go buy extra socks and underwear than do laundry when I was in college and when I was in my early 20s. Now I do laundry like clockwork. I mean, we cloth diaper, so obviously I do. But I have no problems with that anymore. But for some reason when I was younger, I had horrible issues with laundry. I am very OCD about my writing and my penmanship. If something I'm writing doesn't look right, I have to start all over. And we have these little forms that we have to fill out at the hospital for each of our ventilator patients, and it's horrible because if I mess up on something, then I have to start the form completely over. And I know it's crazy, and I know it's something I need to work on, but it's it's bad. My maiden name is Townsend, and James still calls me that, and I think it's kind of cute, kind of like Jim Halpert still calls Pam Beasley on The Office. He still calls me Townsend, and I kind of like it. I am very hyper-organized in some aspects of my life and not organized at all in others. Like, our cloth diapers are extremely organized in drawers. Like, I have, like, pockets, all-in-ones, pre-folds, and, I mean, everything completely organized to a T. And I can think of other examples, but that's the main one I can think of. And then like my craft supplies, I'm not going to show you because it's horribly embarrassing. My craft supplies are in that corner of the room, and they're just sitting there. Like I have no idea how to even start organizing something like that. But once I decide something needs to be organized, I get it organized and it stays organized. But if I don't know what to do, it just sits there. If I had to listen to one band for the rest of my life, it would have to be the Beatles. And I know a lot of people probably say that, but it was one of my dad's favorite bands, and I grew up listening to him, so it ties me back to him in a lot of ways. And I just think their music is very timeless and it never gets old. If I had to pick a modern band, it would probably be Death Cab for Cutie. I love them. I've seen them in concert 3 times, and I love Ben Gibbard. I don't know. Everybody thinks their music is depressing, but I really like it. I have certain movies that I have to watch during Christmas time. Love Actually and The Family Stone. It's not Christmas unless I've seen those movies, and I have to watch those movies around Christmas because if I watch them when it's not Christmas, I'm depressed it's not Christmas. And so I have to watch those movies every single Christmas. I hated my senior year of high school. I hated it. It was horrible. It was just a bad year all the way around. Our drama teacher quit halfway through the year, and so our musical was canceled, and that was a huge deal to me. And she also quit and left the drama club, like, amazingly in debt. Like, she bought all this crap and then took it with her, and we couldn't find it. And the principal had me, I was a drama club president, and the treasurer of the drama club in his office once a week going through the books of the club so he could figure out how much the stuff cost and where it was and what exactly it was. So we had to do that, and then also they couldn't find a sub for the drama classes, and so we had, because I was the president of the drama club, I took this class that was called leadership, and they had me use my leadership class time it was always the first hour of the day, to teach. They had me come up with lesson plans and to teach the first class of the day, the first drama class of the day, and then the sub would just mimic what I did because we couldn't find a regular sub. And looking back, that was ridiculous. Why did they do that? To a 17-year-old. At the time, I thought, I was oh, I'm so adult. I can do this by myself. And craziness. Why did they do that? Well, I'm pretty sure that's 50. If it's not, oops. I think I made notes for 43, and then I made up some. And so I don't know. I didn't keep track. I probably should have kept track. But that was 50 things about me. Hope you enjoyed this. Have a good day. Bye-bye.